Welcome back. All right, so the other day, I went ahead and named who I believe are the top 20 goaltenders in the NHL. There were definitely some comments on that. I anticipate some comments when I'm talking about defensemen today. But these text messages I keep getting saying they're me from the future and that I'm going to undo the very fabric of society and the universe, I think those can go away. I'm going to have to talk to Tellus about that, why I keep getting these messages from the future. But all kidding aside, ranking defensemen is tough. And there were a couple of summers there where I didn't rank players because I did feel like it was more headache than it was necessarily worth. But the reality is that I do enjoy doing rankings, as people would know. I have a song ranking I'm going to be doing on the Entertainment Guide, which I've currently got about 650 songs ranked, but don't get too excited. There's 1,400 plus in the list. At any rate, yeah, I list everything. I'm a list guy. So, but the list guy wouldn't work as a channel name. So before anybody says, hey, you could change, nah. Hockey Guy seems to be the placeholder that worked, and it was a placeholder initially. So naming 20 defensemen is difficult because there are a lot of really good defensemen in the NHL. So in my opinion, there are a lot of defensemen that are not going to be on this list who are very good. Matthias Ekholm in Edmonton is a good example. Noah Dobson, who was just traded to Montreal, being another example of defensemen that are not on this list, but are very good defensemen in their own right, and absolutely could be on this list. I debated about whether or not to put Luke Hughes on this list as well, based on what I think he should be able to do this year, but I didn't want to rank based on what I think a player's going to do. So it does get very difficult. At any rate, top 20. Let's go ahead and jump in. At number 20, from the Avalanche, Devon Taves. Devon Taves is a very good defenseman who people have very differing opinions of online. There are times where I see people talking about how great he is, now he's underrated, and then there are people who say he's very overrated, which is standard NHL discourse when talking about players, and it feels like that's especially true of defensemen. The only players who I think get more scrutiny are your perceived leaders of a team. I think perceived leaders of the team, whether it's Matthews in Toronto or McDavid in Edmonton. Yeah, that's where McDavid is, right? He's still in Edmonton, right? I better check. Anyways, all kidding aside, I think they get the most scrutiny, the defenseman, and of course, your starting goaltender. So Devon Taves, there are definitely differing opinions. I do feel like he still belongs in the top 20. Number 19, from the Los Angeles Kings. Now, Drew Doughty is no longer the defenseman he was when he won the Norris Trophy. Absolutely accurate to say so. I think Drew Doughty's had a couple of very good seasons, which have been clouded a little bit by injuries. So I think his overall play might go unnoticed. And he's a veteran. He's been around forever. So when he makes good plays and everything, we just kind of expect that. I think Doughty still belongs on this list. This may very well be the final season he's on the list. But yeah, I felt like Drew Doughty belonged in the top 20. But it's quite the fall from where he was, say, 5 years ago on the list. Number 18. I wanted to look down at the spelling for this one. So, Mikhail Sergachev, in his first year in Utah, and it was everybody's first year in Utah, but in Sergachev's first year with the organization, I thought he did well. I thought at times the Utah announcers praised him a little bit more than maybe was warranted, but understanding it's a first year, fans are excited. You want to feed that excitement and fuel all that emotion. But Sergachev, I did still think had a very good year. It'll be interesting to see how now with his second year as the guy who's running the defense in Utah, see how things go for him and if any of the changes the team has made in the offseason or just the evolution of the team, if that builds up his numbers as well. But Sergachev, very good defenseman, and I feel like 18th is a good spot for him. Number 17. Going to Detroit for this one. So, like I said, fans are always going to be underrating defensemen. Happens. Moritz Cider, I think, at times gets a bit overrated. I've seen a lot of comments about, well, he's going to win Norris trophies, and he might win a Norris trophy at some point in time. I don't see him as a Norris-level defenseman at this point, but Moritz Seider has still had a very good career thus far, And I think the Detroit Red Wings are still, I would say, a dark horse for the playoffs this coming season. If things fall their way and if John Gibson plays like John Gibson can, maybe Detroit gets there. But another thing that would help is if Moritz Cider had a Norris level season. That's it. Just go out there and play like the best defenseman in the NHL, which, I mean, how hard can that be? It is extremely hard, but there are times where after, like when I'm doing reviews and previews and all this, that I'll see comments in the comment section. I think, man, people on the internet know how to play hockey so much better than hockey players, because we, oh, I can't believe he did that last night. He should have turned this way, and he turned that way instead. And it's like, which team do you play for? So like, I try to avoid that as much as possible. But yeah, the closest I get is I'll be like, I'm not sure what he was thinking there, but I don't have those moments with Moritz Cider. Moritz Cider's a very good defenseman. I feel like 17 is the right spot for him, and I understand that there will be many disagreements on that. Number 16. You know how many years it took for me to figure that out? No matter what I say, people aren't going to agree anyways. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I can defend it. I can make another video saying, this is why this guy's here. And people still go, yeah, you're stupid. I don't care. So, number 16. You would think I'd figured that out over the years, especially being around hockey fans as much as I have been. Blaine Hudson comes in number 16. Not only did he have a fantastic rookie season, he just had a fantastic season as a defenseman. We'll see what he does for an encore. I do see a lot of criticism of his defensive game, and I'm not sure that I understand the level of criticism of his defensive game. Hudson, is he going to make you forget Jacob Slavven? No. But he's an excellent offensive defenseman, and he's good defensively. Not fantastic, but good. And I think with Hudson, and I've said this of many young defensemen, they learn. They learn as the years go by. And I would expect Hudson to only move up this list. And this is the last year that Luke Hughes doesn't end up on this list. Just going to say, this will be the last year Luke Hughes is not in the top 20. Because I debated putting him in here over Devon Taves, and I thought, no, Taves for me still belongs in the top 20, but Hughes is right on the cusp of being in there. And Hudson may very well move up next season, because if he can play anything like he did this past season, Montreal's got themselves quite the defenseman there. Number 15, and I didn't expect the kind of season that Jacob Chychrun had, but he was fantastic this past season. And I've been a Jacob Chychrun fan for a long time, dating back to when he's in Arizona, and I really saw something there. He had that one fantastic season with the Arizona Coyotes, and then he wasn't able to follow that up. He does have a history of injuries, but as long as he's healthy, and he showed with Washington this year, yeah, he can hit 20 goals. And he's not a slouch defensively, in my eyes. I think that Chychrun's a pretty solid defenseman. And then he's not liquid. He also has mass. But he's a very good defenseman. And, yeah, I felt like Chychrun belonged in the top 20. And so I put him at 15. I felt like the combination of the amount of goals he scored and just how well I thought he played for a Washington team that very likely overachieved this past season. And maybe Chychrun overachieved. Maybe he doesn't end up on the list next year, but he's 15 on the list this year. Number 14, from Dallas. Now, no one needs to sell me on how good Thomas Harley is. I think Thomas Harley showed a lot this year, and he turned a lot of heads at Four Nations. Harley, the sky's the limit for him. Dallas is going to have to pay him a ton of money when his contract is done, but he's going to be worth it, I think. Harley is good offensively. He's got the intensity to his game, and I do feel like Harley is one, too, that's probably going to threaten to jump into the top 10 next year. I felt like 14 was the right spot this year as I went through all these last night figuring this out. But yeah, Harley for me, number 14, I feel like is the right spot for him at this point in time. And so let's go ahead and move on to number 13. Number 13 is another defenseman that people talk about as defense. I'm going to say this. Evan Bousard has an amazing shot. He's a very good offensive defenseman. He doesn't make as many errors as a lot of people say, but when he makes an error, it does end up in the back of his net a little bit too often. I will admit that. Now, I would say that that's the kind of thing that with Bousard, he should be cleaning up. I would say that his offense is so good that he still belongs on this list. But I do understand that some of those errors that end up in the back of his net tick people off, and this is why there's that split on whether or not he's worth the contract that he signed this summer. The Oilers would say he is. Some fans would say he's not. I'm kind of on the fence. I think Bousard belongs at 13. I'm not sure if that cap hit's too high, but we'll see this coming season, won't we? The Edmonton Oilers get to the Stanley Cup in back-to-back seasons, and Bousard is not a passenger in either of those years. I think he was a big part of how they got to the Stanley Cup final in 24 and 25, and so I do feel like 13 is the right spot for him. Number 12, and this is a bit of a drop, and I'll explain why Roman Yosi drops. Roman Yosi is usually at least top 5 for me with defensemen, and he may jump back there, but he did not have a fantastic season, as a lot of players in Nashville didn't, as evidenced by the fact UC Saros didn't qualify for the top 20 goaltenders. I just couldn't. I looked at Saros' numbers, both the standard numbers and the advanced numbers. I couldn't project anything really positive with Saros going into this year based on last year's numbers. Now, Yosi was injured, and so I'm giving him a bit of a pass here, and we'll see how this season goes, but we're getting into those years of his career that people pointed out when he signed that extension were going to be too expensive. And so if Yosi bounces back, plays every game, and plays like I know he can, he's back in the top 10. If he does not, he probably ends up either off the list next year or much further down. Yosi, though, if he's healthy, that goes a long way towards maybe a bit of a bounce back year for Nashville, a team that when I did the power rankings the other day, I had at 32nd because I don't really see a bounce back, but I had them at 6th in last summer's power ranking, so I just, yeah. Anyways, rounding out the not top 10, and yeah, number 11. I just had a last moment, because I've been going back and forth on a few of these. Gustav Forsling, Florida. The Florida Panthers, part of how they won the Stanley Cup this year is that production from the blue line and how solid that blue line was. From 1 through 6, everybody did their job. Everybody played their role very well. Forsling has emerged as an excellent defenseman. As some saw in his game before he even reached the NHL, he has now become that defenseman that some thought he would become, and he bounced around the league a little bit before he got to Florida, and Florida's really turned him into one of the best defensemen in the National Hockey League. So, number 11 for Gustav Forsling, I feel like is fair. His plus-minus numbers are ridiculous, and when you point that out, somebody's going to look at you and go, plus-minus doesn't mean anything. What are you talking about? Yeah, don't you understand how hockey works these days? Number 10. Yeah, I'm still thinking about it. Jacob Slavven. So, Carolina's Jacob Slavven ends up in the top 10. Now, if this was just on the defensive side of the puck, he's top 5. Slavven does have some offensive game there as well. He doesn't hurt them offensively. He is fantastic defensively. Slavven is the example I always use of how things changed for me when I started watching all of the teams. And I started watching all of the games. Certain players stood out to me, Slavven being one of them. And so, yeah, Slavven to me is a top 10 defenseman in the NHL. There will be those in the Carolina fandom in the comment section below this video who will tell you he belongs in the top 5. My answer to that would be he's not in my top 5, but I totally understand the sentiment. And that's where there's a bit of a divide in terms of hockey fans' belief in what makes a great defenseman. And my answer to that would be a little bit of both. Offensively minded defenseman is still a good defenseman, but you'd rather that he also has that good defensive part of his game, right? So there you go. Number 9, from Boston. So Charlie Makavoy, coming off of an injury-shortened season with Boston, he can be a top 5 defenseman in the NHL. He's young enough to bounce back from this past season where he was dealing with injury. The Boston Bruins are counting on him and Hampus Lindholm to A, be healthy, and B, bounce back. From what wasn't an awful season for either defenseman, but definitely the amount of games played. Not something that the the Bruins are happy with. The Oilers would be very happy. They don't care. Oilers do not care at all. I have no idea, other than I'm still in Evan Bousard territory at this point. But yeah, Charlie McAvoy at number 9. I feel like it's a fair ranking there. You guys can let me know why I'm wrong. Number 8, and one that generates a lot of discussion at all times, Adam Fox, the New York Rangers. Adam Fox is a very good defenseman that I will acknowledge does get overlooked at times. And I'm not sure what it is. And maybe, for people watching this, maybe I'm overlooking Fox by having him at 8th rather than higher up. Which, because defensemen are just so differently ranked and all that, I have no problem with anybody else's rankings on who they feel the best defenseman is. And if you are of the mind that Adam Fox is a top 3 defenseman in the NHL, good on you. For me, he's number 8. Number 7, from Buffalo. Rasmus Dahlin's offensive game is fantastic. He's good defensively. He plays without fear, which is important on the blue line. And I think he's underrated a bit by fans because he plays in Buffalo. I think a lot of the underrating with Dahlin is because he's a Buffalo Sabre. And if he was playing for the New York Rangers, if he was playing for the Bruins, if he was playing for Florida, like if he was playing for Florida, there would definitely be, like they win the Stanley Cup and Dahlin's on their team, there'd be a lot of people saying, yeah, Dahlin, Norris Trophy and all that. Winning Stanley Cups makes a difference. It absolutely does. It makes a difference. Now people see everybody on the team from top to bottom. So Dahlin's number 7 for me on this year's Defenseman Countdown. Number 6. And this is one that I think is underrated around the NHL. I think Josh Morrissey is underrated. I think he's an excellent defenseman for Winnipeg. I think he's a big part of the reason that they won the President's Trophy this past season. I do think Morrissey gets overlooked plenty, which makes sense because the guys in the top 5 are fantastic. But I've seen lists, as I've looked over lists. I always click on them myself. And yes, I click on lists, and sometimes I look at where players are ranked, and I think, I wonder why they ranked that person there. I wouldn't have ranked that person there. There are lists I've seen Morrissey on where he's in like this region with defensemen. I think Morrissey belongs higher than that. I think Morrissey's an excellent defenseman for Winnipeg. Very consistent, and maybe much like Dahlin, maybe it's because he plays in Winnipeg that he doesn't get as much attention. So we move into the top 5, and at number 5, from Dallas. So I talked about Charlie McAvoy needing to stay healthy. So does Miro Heiskanen. In fact, when I think about it, I have 3 teams I root for, which are Vancouver, Boston, and Dallas. And all 3 of them have defensemen that are going to be looking to bounce back from injury-affected seasons. Miro Heiskanen only played 50 games. They want him to play all 82 and bounce back to what he can be. Miro Heiskanen is a fantastic defenseman. And the fact that Dallas has Harley and Heiskanen, that is something that should at least keep them as a playoff team for some time to come. Because these guys are both workhorses, and Heiskanen is just, for me anyways, personally, he's at another level. Definitely with Miro being hurt, it gave Harley a chance to jump into that spotlight and show that he can handle it, so he's on the list. But yeah, Heiskanen at number 5. Number 4, and one that I've had at number 1 multiple years. And I still think Victor Hedman is a fantastic defenseman in the NHL. I think he's aging very, very well, in his mid-30s, and still one of the best defensemen in the game. I think he's only got the 1 Norris Trophy, right? That to me is criminal. That to me is just criminal. I think Hedman's been arguably the best defenseman in the NHL. I would say over the last 7 or 8 years. If you combine them all together, I'd say he's been their best defenseman. But number 4 for me on this list this year, which means that your top 3, people should have some idea for who the top 3 are, right? Number 3, after an absolutely ridiculous season that he just had, if I ranked Zach Werenski any lower than this, and what's interesting is I did find a list the other day where Werenski's down at 18th. It was a list from last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if I had Werenski in that region too last year. But Werenski for me, and I didn't look at where I had them last year. With these rankings, I don't look at where they were last year. It's not all that important to me. But Werenski at number 3, I think he showed he's an absolute beast out there. Very nearly gets Columbus to the Stanley Cup playoffs. The play of Jet Greaves down the stretch, the overall play of Zach Werenski, and just the timely goals they were able to find. Columbus is a very dangerous team if they can put together another season like the one they just had and just improve their points just a little bit. They could be in the playoffs, and Werenski could be huge in a playoff series. That could be absolutely fantastic. So we're down to 1 and 2. And I think everybody knows who 1 and 2 are going to be. So when I reveal number 2, that's going to tell everybody who number 1 is. So number 2 on the list, and I'm saying this debating, do I show number 1 first or do it? No, we'll go with number 2 first. Number 2, Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes is easily the best defenseman to ever wear a Vancouver Canucks jersey. And I know Ed Jovanovski played for the Vancouver Canucks. They've had other very good defensemen over the years. Nobody compares to Quinn Hughes and what he does. When Quinn Hughes is on the ice, the Canucks are a different team, much like Minnesota is when Kaprizov's on the ice. Everything's different. But Quinn Hughes, the numbers he puts up are absolutely insane. Like I said, the numbers when he's on the ice compared to when he's not on the ice, the analytics tell you he is an excellent play driver. He's very good defensively. And the Canucks kind of fall apart when he's not on the ice. So Quinn Hughes for me at number 2, because number 1, and I know everybody's ahead of me on this one, it is Kale Mar. Kale Mar is scoring at a rate not seen in NHL history for defensemen. And Kale Mar is better defensively, I think, than he gets credit for, because the offense is so good. The argument that I see with Kale Mar a lot is, well, there's no defense there. Erik Karlsson, who did not make the list this year, of course, got a lot of criticism for that too at his peak. Makar, I think, is better than Karlsson was at his peak, and I think Makar's better at his own end than Karlsson was, although at Karlsson's best, Karlsson was still decent defensively, not great, not saying he was fantastic, and then when Karlsson started having skating issues because of injury, it felt like that's where the defensive issues really got stark with him. Makar is still excellent, and I will echo what somebody said in the comments, because I mentioned in a video that a lot of people will say that Makar's numbers are a lot better with MacKinnon than without MacKinnon, and the retort from that viewer was, well, what's to say that Makar doesn't help MacKinnon as much as MacKinnon helps Makar? And I'm not saying that that's necessarily 100% the case, but I think that's a reasonable viewpoint to have, that maybe they help one another. So if Makar's the best defenseman in the game because MacKinnon plays really well with him, it doesn't make him not the best defenseman in the game for me personally. But I do understand there are a lot of people that would like to see Quinn Hughes at number 1. I would love to see Quinn Hughes at number 1 on this list, but for me, Makar is just it's very, very close between the two. And based on this past season, I would have Makar just barely above Quinn Hughes. But this is a battle that I love to see, and hopefully is a battle that goes on for a very long time. So there you go. Top 20 defensemen. Be nice. Everybody be nice in the comment. I'm just kidding. Nobody, the people aren't going to be nice. It's just not how it works. But at any rate, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. So there's the list for this summer, and now I'll move on. I think I'll do wingers next and then centers after that. So stay tuned. If you're angry with these rankings, pace yourself a little bit. There's going to be other rankings for you to get mad at. Don't get all the anger out now. Just save it and then, let some of the anger out the rest of the summer. There's still about 6 weeks until training camp. So just, pace yourself. I don't want to see anybody pulling a hammy or anything. All right. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.